Imagine this: a remote village in Kazakhstan, 2013. A young boy playing outside suddenly collapses. He doesn't wake up. Hours later, his teacher slumps over her desk. A tractor driver falls from his vehicle. They aren't dead, but plunged into a deep, coma-like sleep that can last for days. Over the next 2 years, more than 140 people in the village of Kalachi would fall victim to this bizarre epidemic. Locals called it the Sleepy Hollow sickness. Was it a strange new virus, a mass poisoning, or a psychological plague? This is the medical detective story of a village that couldn't stay awake. The nightmare began in March 2013 with just a handful of cases, but the pattern was terrifyingly consistent. One moment, a person would be going about their day. The next, they would drop to the ground, overcome by an irresistible urge to sleep. This wasn't just a nap. Victims would remain unconscious for 3, 4, sometimes even 6 days straight. When they finally woke up, the horror wasn't over. Many reported vivid nightmarish hallucinations, crippling headaches, nausea, weakness, and significant memory loss. One girl described seeing a winged horse and snakes crawling in her bed. An adult man woke up convinced his arms and legs were gone. The epidemic was almost entirely confined to Kalachi and the nearby, mostly abandoned town of Krasnogorsk. As the number of victims climbed into the dozens, and then over 100, a palpable fear gripped the community. People were afraid to let their children play outside. They were afraid to go to work. Soon, families began to pack up and leave, abandoning their homes for good. The local school was forced to close its doors. The story of the sleeping village spread like wildfire, and soon, international media crews descended on this isolated corner of Kazakhstan, turning a local crisis into a global mystery. The world was watching, but nobody had any answers. The response was swift and massive. Kazakh health officials, consultants from the World Health Organization, top toxicologists, neurologists, and virologists all flocked to Kalachi. They were determined to find the cause. They tested everything and everyone. They took blood samples, spinal fluid, and tissue biopsies. They analyzed the air, the water, the soil, and the food, but every test came back negative. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't a bacterium. There was no evidence of contaminated food or water. Investigators checked for carbon monoxide leaks in homes, but found nothing widespread enough to explain the outbreak. The case was a complete anomaly, defying all easy medical explanations. With all the usual suspects ruled out, the investigators had to look deeper, turning their attention to the ghost lurking on the edge of town, the abandoned Soviet-era uranium mines. The shadow of these mines loomed large over the investigation, leading to several competing theories. The first, which became the official government conclusion, was radiation poisoning, but not in the way you might think. The hypothesis was that colorless, odorless gases, like radon or even high concentrations of carbon monoxide, were seeping from the vast, unsealed network of mining tunnels. When weather conditions were right, these gases could accumulate in the village, reaching levels that would starve the brain of oxygen and trigger this sudden loss of consciousness. Investigators did find elevated levels of radon and carbon monoxide in some homes, lending some credibility to this theory. But there were problems. The symptoms didn't perfectly match classic radiation sickness, and not all the victims lived in areas with the highest recorded gas levels. Why did it affect some people and not their neighbors? This led investigators down a completely different path: mass psychogenic illness. This is a fascinating and well-documented phenomenon where intense social stress can manifest as real, physical symptoms within a group. Kalachi was a town in decline. After the uranium mines closed in the 1990s, jobs disappeared, and the population dwindled. The town was filled with a sense of hopelessness and anxiety. The theory suggests that perhaps the first few cases were caused by something real, maybe a gas leak, but the subsequent wave of illnesses was a psychosomatic reaction, fueled by the intense media attention and a shared, collective fear. The terror of the unknown became a sickness itself. Other theories were explored too. Could a toxic fungus or mold growing in the grain supply or in old, damp buildings be producing mycotoxins that attacked the nervous system? Samples were taken, but nothing conclusive was ever proven. And what about other chemicals? The mines weren't just for uranium. They were complex industrial sites. Perhaps other toxic byproducts, like heavy metals or chemical solvents, had been left behind. They could have leached into the groundwater or become airborne, causing this strange neurological affliction. Each theory had its supporters, but none could definitively explain every aspect of the mystery. Then, almost as mysteriously as it began, the sleeping sickness started to fade. By late 2015, The number of new cases had dwindled to almost zero. The Kazakh government, unable to guarantee the safety of the remaining residents, made a drastic decision. They initiated a mass resettlement program, moving the last families of Kalachi to other villages miles away. Homes were abandoned, and the village that had become famous for its bizarre affliction was effectively erased from the map. But the questions linger. Why did the epidemic happen only there? Why did it affect some people and not others, even within the same household? And why did it stop so abruptly? The official story points to the mines, but the holes in that theory leave plenty of room for doubt.